Hello, this is a brief tutorial on how to cultivate wine cap mushrooms outdoors. You may also hear this mushroom referred to as the garden giant, the red matsutake, or by its scientific name, the Stropharia rugosoannulata. Wine caps are incredible gourmets that taste a little bit like asparagus, and they're one of the easiest mushrooms to grow outdoors. They don't really require much preparation or technology, and most of these materials that I'll mention in this video can be found for free. So the method that I use to cultivate wine caps is pretty specific to Los Angeles and the dry Mediterranean climate we have. While most of the books, videos, and kits that you find about wine caps, they'll say that you need to start this cultivation process in the early fall or spring, the bookends of a deep winter freeze. But here, our mushroom season is in the winter, and that's when we get all of the rain. So I found that the best time to start this process is in late November or December, before the rains come, when temperatures are a little bit more temperate. This time lapse was actually taken in January, so if you get started a little bit later, that's okay, but I wouldn't do this work after March if you live in Southern California. In less than 3 months since inoculating the garden bed in this video, we've already started harvesting mushrooms. In the first week alone, I collected about 10 pounds of mushrooms from this one single bed, and we'll continue to get even more into next year. To get started, you want to clear an area where you're going to cultivate these mushrooms. The bed can be virtually any size, but you want to pick an area that's a little bit shady, surrounded by plants, and not getting too much foot traffic. These mushrooms are incredibly good for your plants and your soil, and they actually benefit from being around plants. There's a lot of science about this that you can read about online. This video will not go into it, but you just don't want to isolate this patch completely. It's actually very good to incorporate it into your garden. So the next step is to dig a shallow trench and line it with cardboard. The cardboard suppresses the weeds, and this whole process is a bit unorthodox and optional. Many people do not dig a trench when they're cultivating this mushroom. I just found in Los Angeles, where it's incredibly dry and my mushroom beds are more likely to dry out, particularly if it's a very shallow bed. They're a little less exposed if they are in a trench, and the cardboard is going to turn into fuel for the mushrooms and for the soil eventually, so it's also a great utilization of household waste streams, but you really don't need to dig the trench or use cardboard if you want to keep this even simpler. We're going to be using straw as the primary substrate for the mushrooms. The mycelium is going to break down the straw and use it as fuel for the harvest that we're going to get in a few months. What's really important with the straw is you need to soak it for 24 to 72 hours before you do this next step. So we took about 30 gallons of straw, put it in a big plastic bin, submerged it in water for 2 days, put a big cinder block on top so it was fully submerged in water, and then drained all that water out, gave it to the plants, and then added the straw to the trench that we had created. So your bed doesn't have to be as large as ours. We use a lot of straw. We have way too many mushrooms, actually, from a bed this large. I tend to make things a little bit too big because it's very dry here, and I'm always worried that if I don't make the beds deep enough that they will dry out. So it does help you, but you do not need to make your bed this large. So after the wet straw has been added to the trench, it's all primed for the mycelium. So we use 3 5-pound bags of wine cap substrate that I made in my lab. This is something that you can buy online. Wine cap spawn or wine cap substrate is really easy to find online. You don't need to do complex math equations or calculations to figure out how much spawn to add to your garden bed. If you really want to get to the numbers, I would say about 5% by weight at a very minimum ratio to the straw. So if you have 50 pounds of straw, you really only need a few pounds of substrate. Of course, if you add more wine cap spawn, you're going to have faster growing mushrooms. They're going to be stronger. They're going to have a better fighting chance. But if you want to save some money, you don't really need to use that much. This is an incredibly resilient mushroom. After the straw is added, we cover everything in wood chips. We got free wood chips from the community pile here in Los Angeles. Unlike a lot of mushrooms that really only like oaks and certain deciduous trees, these wood chips do not need to be hardwoods. They don't need to be deciduous. I've used pine, and this video we used eucalyptus. It's really just a moisture barrier for the most part. It's not a primary nutritional substrate for the mushrooms that we're growing, but the covering will protect the mushrooms, creates a little bit of a shield. We didn't soak the wood chips, but if you want brownie points, you can soak the wood chips in the same way that you soak the straw. That will definitely help, even just to add moisture to this bed that you're creating. So after the wood chips are added, you're done. You can hose it down, irrigate it a little bit, just keep an eye on this bed over the next few months. We've had a really rainy winter here in Los Angeles this year, so we've been lucky. I haven't had to water any of these beds that we made this winter, but if it's not as rainy, or if you have a very dry year, you can hose it down. You can really just trust your intuition, trust your gut. If it looks dry, it's probably dry, but we have a lot of moisture protected under these wood chips. So after that, you're keep an eye on it. After about 10 days, you can peel back some of the wood chips that you covered this straw and bed with, and you'll find that there's a lot of mycelium growing. You really won't see mushrooms grow until about 3 months. That's when ours started. It might take longer. If the weather gets a little bit warm, that can trigger the mushrooms to grow. A cold snap or a kind of warmer spring weather period will trigger these mushrooms to all grow. They usually will all start growing at the same time. And this will go on sometimes indefinitely. So I expect to get mushrooms next year. I expect to continue to harvest these mushrooms over the next few weeks. I probably have harvested about 10 to 20 pounds of mushrooms in a 10-day period from this one patch. So a lot of mushrooms. I've been giving away a lot to friends. So that's everything you need to know. This is the technique that has been by far the most successful for me in Los Angeles. There's many other ways that people cultivate wine caps outdoors. You can find other online. The one that I use is, again, very specific to the place where I live and the challenges and seasons that I'm up against. So start this early. Start this November, December, before it gets too rainy. And you should get a lot of mushrooms. I also want to thank my friends at Terremoto, the native landscape firm in Los Angeles and the Bay Area that came by to help me with this demo. That you see them working in our time lapse, and to the artist David Horvitz, who hosted this demo at his community art garden in Los Angeles. An incredible place. Check it out. David Horvitz, incredible artist. Thank you for hosting me, and yeah, stay in touch. Thanks, everybody.